They say a fire kills quickly. That's not true. I know better. Flames are loud, brutal, but short. Betrayal burns slow, steady, choking you one breath at a time until you don't even realize you're already gone. I'd spent 40 years running into burning buildings, dragging strangers out while smoke clawed at my lungs. Thought I'd seen every way a life could be taken. Then my wife, Linda, walked into a hospital for what they called a routine procedure and never walked out again. It wasn't the fire that killed her. It was a man in a white coat who smiled too easily and said, "No worries, Mr. Mason. This is simple, safe. We'll have her home in 3 days." 3 days. That's what he promised. 3 days later, I was holding her cold hand, listening to machines flatten her heartbeat into silence. The death certificate said complications. I knew better. I still remember the waiting room, stale coffee, vinyl chairs that stuck to the back of my legs, the smell of bleach and fear. When the doctor came out, he didn't even look shaken. His words were polished, rehearsed. These things happen. She was fragile. We did our best. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. Fragile? Linda? She was tougher than me. She raised 2 kids while I spent nights pulling bodies out of smoke. She survived 2 miscarriages, 3 house moves, years of me coming home reeking of ash and fear. She was steel wrapped in kindness. And he called her fragile. I buried her in the Portland rain, the kind that seeps through your bones and makes you wish the ground would just open and take you too. My son, Michael, gripped my arm at the graveside. My daughter, Susan, pressed tissues into my hand, like paper could soak up 45 years of love. "Dad," Susan whispered, "you have to let this go. It was an accident." I looked at her, my only daughter, and saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not grief. Something colder. She was hiding something. At first, I ignored it. Grief makes you see shadows where none exist. But shadows became shapes, and shapes became faces. A week after the funeral, I found a letter in the mail addressed to Susan from West River Insurance. I don't open my kids' mail, never needed to. But grief makes you reckless. I tore it open. Inside, a check. A performance bonus. For what? I had no idea. But I remembered Linda arguing with the doctor about insurance the night before surgery. Why not the safer option, she'd asked. He'd waved it off. Too expensive, not covered. The safer option. I poured myself a whiskey, sat at the kitchen table, staring at that check. My daughter's name printed bold, the same name her mother had sewn into every jacket she wore. And then my phone buzzed. A voicemail. Michael's voice, low, tense. "Doc, it's me. He's asking too many questions. You said this wouldn't reach us. Call me back." My own son, talking to the man who killed his mother. That was the moment. Not the funeral. Not the death certificate. That voicemail was the spark. I wasn't a grieving widower anymore. I was a firefighter again, staring at a blaze ripping through my home. Only this time, the fire wasn't smoke and wood. It was blood and lies. And I wasn't running from it. I was walking straight in, ready to drag the guilty out by their throats. Because if my kids thought siding with that doctor would save them, they'd forgotten who raised them. They'd forgotten what fire does to liars. And I was about to remind them. The first thing a firefighter learns is this. You don't fight the whole blaze at once. You find the source, the weak spot, the thing that feeds it. You cut that vein, and the fire starves. My fire had 2 veins, my son and my daughter. I started with Susan. She'd always been the careful one, the planner. She made lists for vacations, color-coded calendars for school, saved every receipt since she was 16. Which meant if she was hiding something now, there'd be a trail. One night, I drove to her office. West River Insurance, glass lobby, sterile plants. The kind of place that smells like ambition and disinfectant. The receptionist had gone home, lights dimmed except for the glow of computers left on standby. I still had my old firefighter's badge in my wallet, worn thin, the lettering faded. Funny thing about badges, People don't look too close when a tired old man flashes one and mutters about an emergency records check. By the time the night guard finished his sandwich, I was already in Susan's cubicle. Her desk was neat, too neat. But the drawers told another story. Contracts, invoices, emails printed out, highlighted. And at the bottom, a folder marked Preferred Physicians Program. Dr. Edward Marsh. First name on the list. The contract spelled it out in black and white. Lower cost procedures, higher commission bonuses for the insurance rep who signed off. Susan had signed. I felt my jaw tighten. My daughter hadn't just known about Marsh. She'd profited from him. I left everything exactly where I found it, but not before snapping photos with my phone. Paper doesn't lie, even when people do. The next day, I visited Michael. He lived in a sleek condo downtown, bought with money he claimed came from consulting. I'd never asked what kind. I didn't want to know until now. He opened the door in a suit that cost more than my truck. "Dad, you should have called." I smiled, the way a wolf shows teeth. Wouldn't want to interrupt your busy schedule. Inside, the place reeked of new leather and expensive whiskey. A glass already sat half empty on the counter. He was rattled. I could see it in the way his hands twitched when he poured me one too. "How you holding up?" he asked, voice rehearsed. I set the glass down untouched. "Funny. I thought you'd tell me. Since you're the one who talks to Marsh." His eyes snapped up, wide. He tried to cover. Too late. "Dad, you don't understand." "I understand enough." I cut him off. "I've heard your messages. I've seen your sister's contracts. And I know both of you stood next to the man who killed your mother." For a second, silence. Then his face cracked. "You think I had a choice?" he barked. "Marsh owns half the board at that hospital. He covered debts you don't know about. Without him, I'd be finished." I leaned in, voice low, dangerous. "Better finished than filthy. You didn't just sell yourself, Michael. You sold your mother." He looked away, jaw tight, no defense left. When I left that condo, I wasn't just angry. I was steady, clear. My children weren't victims. They were accomplices. Marsh had bought them cheap, and they'd let him. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table with Martha's photo in front of me, the one where she's laughing with flour on her nose from baking bread. I whispered to her like I used to at night, "Don't worry. I've got the hose in my hands now. I'll drown this fire." I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years, an old friend from the firehouse who'd gone into private investigations. A man who knew how to dig where lawyers wouldn't. "Harold Mason," he said when he answered, voice still gravel after all these years. "Haven't heard that name in a long time. What's the job?" I took a long breath. "Family. Doctor. Fraud. I need proof that can't be buried." He chuckled darkly. "Hell of a mix. But if you've got the guts to see it through, I've got the tools." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "I've got the guts, Tommy. And more. I've got nothing left to lose." Because the next step wasn't snooping in drawers or cornering my son in his condo. The next step was pulling the whole rotten house down, with every name nailed to its walls. Tommy never wasted time. 2 days later, I found him parked outside my house in the same dented Buick he'd been driving since the firehouse days. He had a folder thick enough to choke on and a grin that told me he'd found gold. "You wanted proof," he said, handing me the folder. "You've got a whole mine." I spread the papers across my kitchen table. Phone records, bank transfers, meeting notes, and then the photographs, grainy, zoomed in from a distance, but clear enough. Susan at a steakhouse, shaking hands with a pharmaceutical rep. Michael stepping out of Marsh's office at midnight, face pale, envelope in hand. Tommy tapped a page with his calloused finger. "Your daughter's not just approving shady procedures. She's funneling bonus money into her own side account. Cayman Islands. Under her maiden name." My stomach twisted. Susan, my careful, organized little girl who once cried when she lost her allowance in the 3rd grade, now hiding blood money overseas. "And your son," Tommy went on. "He's worse. Marsh used him to push through approvals for untested drugs. He signed off documents in exchange for debt forgiveness. Credit cards, gambling markers, you name it. Dr. Marsh owns him outright. I didn't speak. My chest felt like it was on fire. Not the fast kind. The slow, suffocating smoke that creeps under doors. Tommy leaned back, lighting a cigarette. You've got them nailed, Harry. All of them. The question is, what do you want to do with it? I looked at Martha's picture on the mantel, flowers still on her nose, eyes still laughing at me. My hands clenched into fists. I'm going to make them choke on their own lies. The first strike had to be quiet, surgical, a warning shot they couldn't trace. That evening, I printed 3 copies of the contract with Susan's signature, the one tying her directly to Marsh's preferred physicians program. I mailed one to her office anonymously, one to her boss, and one to her husband. By morning, she'd know someone had peeled the mask off. Then I turned to Michael. I slipped a flash drive under his condo door. No note, no explanation, just a single file. A scan of his gambling debts, the IOUs Marsh had paid off, linked directly to his approvals for those tainted drugs. I knew the second he opened it, sweat would pour down his back. The beauty of it was simple. They wouldn't know where the attack came from. Not yet. The next day proved me right. Susan showed up at my door, eyes red, jaw tight. Dad, someone's sending things. To my office, to Brian. She looked like she hadn't slept. It's lies. It has to be. I played dumb, stirred sugar into my coffee. What kind of lies? She hesitated, searching my face. Just things about work. But you can't believe them. I sipped slow. I didn't say I did. Michael wasn't so calm. He called at midnight, voice hoarse. Dad, I don't know what you've heard, but you can't trust anything you see. Marsh is being targeted. If he goes down, so does everyone connected. Everyone connected, I repeated. Including you? Silence. Then, I'm trying to fix it. I swear. Just stay out of it. But I wasn't out of it. I was right in the middle, and they didn't even know. The next evening, I drove out to Tommy's place. He handed me another folder, thicker this time. This one's hotter. Email exchanges between Marsh, Susan, and Michael. Explicit language. Kickbacks, hush money, procedure codes manipulated to save costs. It's enough to bury all 3. I flipped through the pages. One line froze me cold. Patient L. Mason recommended cheaper procedure. Outcome irrelevant. Billing cleared. My wife. Reduced to a line item. Outcome irrelevant. I felt something inside me snap like a beam giving way in a fire. Tommy must have seen it in my face. Harry, he said quietly, this isn't just about exposing them, is it? I closed the folder, my hands steady now. No, Tommy. This is about making them feel what Linda felt. Helpless. Small. Forgotten. I stood, tucking the folder under my arm. And the first embers already lit. By the time this fire's done, none of them will have a place left to hide. Because the warning shots were over. It was time for the flames. When a fire catches, you can't always tell where it started. Smoke curls out of a dozen cracks. Neighbors panic, and everyone points fingers. That's what was happening now. Only the blaze was names on paper, numbers in accounts, and whispers in boardrooms. By Monday, Marsh's world was bleeding. The hospital board had received an anonymous packet. Susan's signature splashed across preferred physicians program contracts. She was summoned into a closed-door meeting. Her husband, Brian, texted me later that night. What's going on with Susan's work? She's hiding something. Won't talk to me. Good. Let her feel isolation. It eats faster than fire. Michael fared worse. His firm called an emergency review after someone accidentally copied his gambling IOUs to the compliance team. He tried calling me 6 times that day. I didn't answer once. I wanted him to stew in it, pacing his condo, staring at his expensive whiskey bottles while sweat rolled down his back. And Marsh? Oh, Marsh was scrambling. I knew because Tommy sent me a photo. Marsh slipping into a side entrance of a law office downtown, his perfect hair gone thin, his once confident stride now hunched. The caption under Tommy's photo said it all. Rat looking for a new hole. But the best part wasn't the panic. It was the suspicion. That evening, Susan stormed into my house without knocking, her heels snapping against the hardwood like gunshots. Her eyes were red, her voice ragged. "Dad?" she hissed. "What the hell are you doing?" I raised my brows. "Doing? Don't play dumb," she snapped. "Someone's leaking documents, my documents, to the board. Private contracts, signatures only I had access to. You think I wouldn't notice?" I leaned back in my chair, calm. "Sounds like you've got bigger problems than me." Her eyes narrowed. "You think I don't see it? The way you look at me. The questions. You've been digging, haven't you?" I didn't answer. Silence can burn hotter than words. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Dad, listen to me. If you keep pushing, you'll ruin Michael. You'll ruin all of us. Mom wouldn't want this." The name hit me like a slap. I stood so fast my chair screeched against the floor. "Don't you dare use your mother's name to excuse the dirt under your nails. She died because of him, and you helped cover it." For the first time, I saw fear crack through Susan's polished face. She backed toward the door, whispering, "You don't understand what you're dealing with." But she was wrong. I understood perfectly. 2 days later, Michael showed up. Not angry, broken. His tie hung loose, his voice hoarse. "Dad," he said, sinking into my armchair like a man twice his age. "It's you, isn't it? You're the one pulling the strings." I stayed silent, staring at him. He buried his face in his hands. "You don't get it. Marsh isn't just a doctor. He's connected. He's protected. If he goes down, he'll drag me and Susan with him. We'll lose everything. Our careers, our homes. You already lost everything." I cut him off. "You lost your mother's respect. You lost mine. Everything else is just debris." He looked up, eyes rimmed red. "Dad, please. Stop. Before this goes too far." I leaned forward, voice like steel. "Too far? Son, you haven't seen far yet." Because the truth was out, and the fire was spreading. Marsh's name was whispered in boardrooms, Susan's in insurance corridors, Michael's in compliance reports. None of them could stop it. And yet, the real blaze hadn't even started. I was saving that for the night of the hospital's annual gala, the place Marsh loved to preen, the night my children would be forced to stand at his side. That was where I'd strike the match. The hospital gala had always been a circus. Rich donors, polished speeches, champagne flowing like water. Linda and I had gone once, years back. She wore a green dress that made every man in the room forget his own wife. I remember how she laughed, whispering in my ear. "They act like gods, but they bleed like everyone else." That memory burned in my chest as I stepped into the ballroom now, alone, in my old black suit. The chandeliers spilled light over polished floors, violins hummed from the corner, and the smell of lobster and perfume swirled together like poison. And there he was, Dr. Edward Marsh, still trying to look untouchable, shaking hands, flashing that same reptile smile. But his eyes betrayed him, darting, restless, scanning the crowd for threats. On his arm, like obedient soldiers, stood my children. Susan in a glittering silver gown, mask of poise barely holding. Michael beside her, jaw tight, sweat gathering at his temples. They were supposed to be his allies tonight, supposed to stand tall. Instead, they looked like prisoners waiting for their turn at the gallows. I didn't need to get close. My plan was already seated. At 8:15 sharp, the lights dimmed. Marsh climbed onto the stage, microphone in hand, ready to bathe himself in applause. But before he could speak, the giant screens behind him flickered. Not slides about philanthropy or innovation. Emails, contracts, wire transfers, every dirty document Tommy and I had collected, projected 20 feet high for every donor, every reporter, every staff member to see. A murmur rippled through the ballroom. Then gasps. Someone screamed. Marsh froze, his mouth hanging open. The spotlight turned him pale. "Turn it off," he barked, waving at the tech crew. But they didn't move. Because I wasn't running this show from the booth. I was standing right in the center of the floor, remote control in hand. All eyes turned to me. The widower. The relic. The ghost they thought had been buried with Linda. I raised my voice, not shouting, but steady, cutting through the chaos. This is what killed my wife. This is what poisoned my family. You call it medicine. I call it murder. Gasps turned to shouts. Reporters scrambled for cameras. Donors stormed toward the exits, their tuxedos flapping like broken wings. Michael shoved through the crowd, his face white as chalk. Dad, please, don't do this here. I met his eyes, unflinching. You already did this here. Every signature, every lie, every dollar. Susan clutched his arm, whispering frantically, we can fix this, we can spin it. But Marsh roared into the mic, his voice cracking. These are fabrications. Lies from a bitter old man. He has no proof. I clicked the remote again, and there it was, his recorded voice. His threat to me on the phone. Dragging my name into baseless claims will only bring you pain. Played loud enough for the entire ballroom to hear. The room erupted. Reporters shoved microphones into stunned faces. Donors shouted for their money back. And Marsh? His smirk shattered. He looked like a man watching his own obituary scroll across the screen. Susan's knees buckled. Michael swore under his breath, grabbing her before she collapsed. My children, once so proud to stand beside him, now looked like rats cornered with their master. I stepped closer to the stage, lifting Linda's photo high above my head. She believed in you, I said, my voice breaking for the first time. She trusted you with her life, and you cashed her in like a chip at a casino. The crowd's roar became deafening. Phones flashed. Security rushed forward. Marsh dropped the mic, shoved past Susan and Michael, and fled off stage, his empire burning behind him. And I knew this was only the beginning. Because rats don't just run, they drag others with them. And soon, Marsh would start clawing at the people closest to him, which meant my children's reckoning was coming, faster than they could imagine. The gala footage spread like wildfire. By dawn, it was everywhere, on local news, splashed across YouTube, replayed on social media with captions like "Hospital Hero" or "Murderer" and "Dr. Marsh Exposed." I watched from my kitchen table, black coffee in hand, as pundits dissected every line of those emails. Marsh's name was a curse now. Donors withdrew. The hospital board issued a temporary suspension. Lawyers whispered about indictments. But fire never stops at the house you aimed for. It leaps. It spreads. And it had already jumped onto my children. Susan's boss suspended her with pay, corporate language for "start packing your desk." Her husband, Brian, stormed out of their house after learning she'd hidden offshore accounts in her maiden name. I knew because she called me that morning, voice cracking through tears. "Dad, I don't know how they found it. I didn't mean for it to. You signed your name," I cut in. "You chose your bonus over your mother's life. Now you get to live with that signature." Her sobbing through the phone didn't move me. Not anymore. Michael, though, he went further down. His firm suspended his license. Then reporters dug up his gambling debts. It was all public now, thousands in IOUs wiped clean by Marsh's friends. Photos of him leaving Marsh's office at night surfaced. Headline, "Doctor's Dirty Fixer?" By evening, my son was on my porch, eyes bloodshot, tie gone, hair wild. He looked less like the polished professional he pretended to be and more like the frightened kid I once dragged out of a house fire drill when he froze on the stairs. "Dad," he croaked, "you have to help me. Marsh, he's blaming everything on me. He says I forged signatures, pushed approvals. The FBI called. They're investigating me, not him." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. I didn't invite him in. I just stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Maybe you should have thought about that before you licked his boots. He grabbed the doorframe like a drowning man. "I did it for you. For Susan. For Mom's bills." "Don't." I snapped, my voice sharp enough to cut. "Don't you dare put her name in your mouth." For a moment, silence. Then he whispered, You'll let me go to prison? I met his eyes, steady, cold. You already built the cell. I'm just watching you walk into it. He stumbled back, shaking his head, muttering curses as he staggered down the steps. That night, my phone buzzed again. Not Susan. Not Michael. Marsh. His voice was calm now, too calm. The calm of a man who'd already decided he had nothing left to lose. Impressive show at the gala, Mason. But fire spreads, doesn't it? You think you're safe because the world hates me now? You're not. You've got children drowning in the same smoke. And when I go down, I'll make sure they burn first. The line went dead. I sat in the dark kitchen, the weight of his words pressing in. My kids were guilty, yes. They'd chosen greed. They'd chosen him. But Marsh was right about one thing. If he dragged them down, my grandson Ethan would suffer most. Claire would suffer. And that was a price I wouldn't let him pay. I picked up Martha's photo, traced her smile with my thumb. One more fire, love, I whispered. One last burn. Because this wasn't about watching anymore. It was about ending it. Marsh, my son, my daughter, all of them, in one strike. And the place to do it wasn't a gala. It was a courtroom, but not the kind with judges. The kind where truth is stripped raw in front of everyone, and no one walks away clean. I didn't wait for lawyers. I didn't wait for subpoenas. I built my own courtroom. The church hall downtown had stood empty since COVID shut down the congregation. I rented it under a fake name, set up rows of folding chairs, a borrowed projector, and one microphone on a stand. Nothing grand. Just four walls, one truth, and an audience that couldn't look away. The invitations went out the old-fashioned way. Anonymous emails, tipped-off reporters, a handful of hospital staff who hated Marsh enough to leak his sins. And one each to my children, typed from a burner laptop. Your reckoning. Friday, 7 p.m., downtown community hall. Don't be late. By dusk, the place hummed with whispers. Reporters jostled for seats. Neighbors leaned forward curious. Ex-nurses and accountants clutched folders of their own grievances. The air smelled like dust, sweat, and anticipation. At 7:05, Susan walked in first. Pale, brittle, eyes darting like a cornered animal. She wore black, as if mourning herself. Michael followed, jaw clenched, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Then Marsh. Still in his immaculate suit, though it hung looser now, his face carved with sleepless rage. He looked at me like a man planning murder. I stepped to the microphone. My voice didn't shake. My name is Harold Mason. I buried my wife because of the man standing there. I pointed straight at Marsh. Cameras flashed. But she's not the only one. Behind him stood my son and my daughter. My blood. They signed. They lied. They cashed the checks. And tonight, we stopped pretending it was anything but betrayal. Gasps rippled through the hall. Susan whispered, "Dad, please," under her breath. Michael tried to lunge forward, but I raised my hand. Sit. My voice cracked like a command from a fire chief. They sat. I clicked the projector. The wall lit up with contracts, wire transfers, screenshots. Susan's signature approving kickback programs. Michael's emails begging Marsh for relief from gambling debts. Marsh's own memo. Pay Chanel. Mason. Cheaper procedure approved. Outcome irrelevant. The hall erupted. Shouts, curses, cameras clicking like gunfire. Susan broke first. She stood, tears streaming, shouting over the noise. I didn't know Mom would. I thought it was routine. Marsh said it was safe. Marsh sneered. You signed because you wanted the bonuses, Susan. Don't blame me for your greed. The crowd roared louder. Then Michael stood, shaking, his voice cracking. I did it to save us. Marsh had me trapped, Dad. If I didn't play along, I'd lose everything. I leaned into the mic, cold as stone. You already lost everything the day you chose him over her. The hall went silent for one long second. My words hung heavy, undeniable. Then Marsh snapped. He shoved past Michael, storming toward the stage, spittle flying. You think you've won? You're a washed-up old man. When I go down, I'll drag your children screaming with me." He grabbed for the mic. But before he could, Susan screamed, "He's right." Every eye turned to her. She was shaking, wild, mascara streaking her cheeks. "He's right. Marsh has everything on us. If he burns, we burn too." And that was it, the final nail. The audience surged like a tide, reporters shouting questions, flashes blinding, nurses pointing fingers. Marsh's mask shattered completely as security pushed him back. Susan collapsed in sobs. Michael buried his face in his hands. I stood above them all, Martha's photo clutched in my pocket, my voice steady in the chaos. "You see them? Doctor, daughter, son. Different titles, same sin. My wife's death was just their first profit margin. But tonight, they can't hide behind clinics or contracts. Tonight, the fire's at their door." The hall roared. Reporters streamed the chaos live. Marsh's lawyers tried to drag him out, but the crowd swarmed. My children stared at me like I'd ripped the ground out from under their feet. And I knew the final strike was only hours away. Because this wasn't just scandal anymore. The FBI was already waiting outside. The church hall emptied into flashing red and blue. Reporters were trampled by their own cameramen as FBI jackets pushed through the doors. The noise inside was a hurricane. Shouts, cries, the scrape of chairs as people tried to slip out unseen. But the agents weren't here for the audience. They were here for the three standing under the hot light of my truth. Marsh barked something about attorneys and political vendettas, but his wrists were already pulled behind him. For the first time, his perfect hair was mussed, his tie crooked. He looked small, just a man. Susan collapsed against the pew, her mascara smeared, hands trembling as an agent read her rights. She kept saying, "I didn't mean to," over and over, like a child caught stealing candy. But the signatures on those contracts said otherwise. Michael tried to fight. "You don't understand. He made me," he lunged, but two agents shoved him hard against the wall, cuffs snapping closed before he could finish the sentence. I stood off to the side, arms folded, watching it all. Not a word from me. Not a finger raised. Because I'd already set the blaze, and now it was finishing the job. When Marsh passed me, eyes burning with hatred, he hissed, "You'll regret this, Mason. You've destroyed your own family." I leaned close enough that only he could hear. "No, you destroyed them the day you treated my wife's life like a line on a balance sheet." I just lit the match. They dragged him out into the night, cameras popping, his empire crumbling with every flash. Susan screamed my name, begging me to stop them. Michael cursed, called me a traitor, but I didn't move. They weren't my children anymore, not the ones Linda and I raised. Those kids had died the moment greed took root. Outside, the night air was cold and clean. I pulled Martha's photo from my pocket, held it up to the starlight. "You said they bleed like everyone else," I whispered. "You were right." The agents loaded the three of them into waiting vans. The crowd chanted, jeered, recorded every second for the world to see. And me? I walked away, my boots heavy on the cracked pavement, my heart finally steady. Because revenge isn't about rage. Rage burns fast. Revenge is patience. Revenge is letting them think they've won, until the fire finds them in their own house. At the corner, a reporter shoved a mic toward me. "Mr. Mason, do you have any final words about tonight?" I looked straight into the camera. My voice was sharp, final. "The dead don't rest until the living make it right. Tonight, I made it right." And with that, I turned my back on the lights, the noise, the ruins of their lies, walking into the quiet, where Martha's smile still waited for me. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching.